on this channel. I did want to show you guys today the tracker or budgeting tool that I use. I did create an Excel sheet tracker that I personally have been using since December of 2024. I was using another one that was a little bit less appealing to the eye, and sometimes you just need to change up your budgeting templates in general. And so I created one for myself based on some tips and tricks that I in general saw in the budgeting community, in the financial expert world, about what key areas to focus on. And so I'm going to be showing you guys that today. And so I hope that you guys are excited to see that and learn something useful along the way. If you guys are looking forward to the video and are excited for the content to come along, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. It would really support the channel and it would really make me happy. And who doesn't want to be happy? Also, let me know downstairs in the comments if you have any questions or just feedback in general for my personal tracker. Let me know what type of tracker you guys use. Have you gotten yours from Etsy? Have you guys made one yourself? Or have you actually had an accountant make you one and then you kind of let them take on the reins? Nonetheless, I think I can record from my computer and I'll try to show you guys that. I'm really hoping that this works. If it doesn't, then I guess you guys will never see this video. But anyways, let's record. Whoa. Okay, so I believe we are recording, I hope. Let me make this smaller for you guys so you guys can visibly see everything. So yeah, just to kind of explain everything on this tracker, I did, like I said, make it myself, and then I do have the monthly template, and then every single time that a new month rolls around, I do duplicate the tab and just change the name of the tab so I know which month it is referring to. And I do it in opposite chronological order, so the months more recent are closer to the left, and that way I don't have to scroll so far to the right or whatever to see my income, my savings, etc. So I won't go into the other months. I'll just go in and explain my template. The reason being is because I don't exactly 100% feel comfortable sharing like my income and stuff like that. And as you guys can see here on the left side, I actually have a YouTube version monthly template which is to show you guys how I would go ahead about budgeting, tracking, etc. However, I feel like I'm doing an injustice and a dishonest injustice to you guys by explaining how I budget my money and stuff like that with fake numbers, whether higher or lower than my actual income, and what's that there to do for anybody, you know what I mean? I don't combine I combine my finances with my husband in terms of like, we have a common savings account, but we both have our separate checking accounts. As you guys know, my husband is from Dominican Republic and I'm actually from Venezuela, but I came to Canada when I was 9 years old. And so some things that don't get taught back home, I've learned and I've had the privilege to learn here in Canada. Even the fact that YouTube exists, it's not very accessible in other countries. I'm not sure if Venezuela would be one of them because I came here like so long ago. All that to say, I don't know what accessibility I would have had I stayed in Venezuela, and the learning things that I've gathered over the years, if that would be applicable to me today had I stayed back home, you know what I mean? That being said, he hates the concept of budgeting. He just doesn't get it, but it's not his fault that hasn't been taught. And not only he hasn't been taught, even if he was taught back home, the system is just so corrupt that even if the government owes you taxes, they would just keep it for themselves, you know what I mean? So I don't blame him for wanting to keep his stuff off of my template, but anyways, just so you guys are aware that I usually only use this for myself. So I am just going to cover up my employer's name, not because it has like a physical office that I need to be worried about from unwanted visitors, but just in general, you guys don't need to know where I work. And so that's that. So anyways, I do have the paycheck here on the left top corner. So as you guys can see, this income portion is my income. And so I have my various income streams in there, which is not that many, and they're definitely not passive, unfortunately, but you know, work in progress. As you guys see here, I do have like a little, in brackets here, I have P.M and C.M. I mentioned in another video of mine, but just to kind of describe it here in more thorough detail, I do use my previous month's second paycheck to go towards the budgeting for the new month. So for example, let's just say that this is going into May. This would refer to the second April paycheck, and then the second income source that I have from my employer for the month would be the first paycheck of that month. So to kind of make it clear, let's pretend that it's May. For May, the budgeting income that I have budgeted the second paycheck of April, so that would be the previous month, PM, and then the first paycheck of that current month, so May first paycheck. I hope that makes sense. And the reason why I do that is because if you, for example, get paid on the last day of the month, are you really using your income of that paycheck for the duration of the month, which is less than a day? You know what I mean? So that's why I started doing that in December of 2024, just to kind of see how I liked it, and I do like it. However, I will say my expenses overall, even if it goes to the last day of the month, I do dictate them to be for that month. Even though the second paycheck of April goes into my May budget, if there is an expense that I do on the last day of April, it still goes on my April tab within the budgeting sheet. This is what works for me. Of course, budgeting, the beautiful thing about it is that you can make it your own in a way that makes sense. has for you. So if this is confusing for you guys, by all means watch other videos, get inspiration from other content creators or other professionals that may use the system, and so, or even just write it down on paper, whatever makes sense for you. You know what I'm saying? Don't let anybody else's way confuse you, because at the end of the day, your money has to work for you. But anyways, I just want to share that. So I do have my second paycheck from the previous month and the first paycheck of this month as my source of income for my actual salaried employment. Then I have the CCD, which is the money that I get from the government for the children. And then again, I put expected dates and stuff, but this is just the template, so I don't touch this one. But in the other months over here, they would have been filled out. And I do have a function that I added recently where it's just you double click the cell and then you can actually pick the date. I had to Google that because I couldn't figure it out. As you guys are aware, I also do Uber on the side, and so I just put various for the effective date because this can come from different dates. So that's the expected amount and then the actual amount. So when it comes to budgeting, I do have the expected column for majority of these categories and then the actual. Obviously, when it comes to variable expenses, that's what you should be watching out for more, because variable expenses, as they are variable, you have to make sure that you don't go over budget. For income and for fixed expenses, usually they stay about the same, and so I don't really worry too much about those, but obviously the money will be there for those. Next, I have payback from MF, that is my husband. Obviously, we share expenses to some degree, and there are amounts that he owes me from a while back, and I want y'all to understand that, because people will judge you so quick without the context. Not that my husband and I are two separate units within the unit of the matrimony that we hold. However, there are certain boundaries that sometimes get crossed in the need of emergency, and not that somebody's doing it in a malicious intent. However, it's different giving somebody $30 out of your own heart versus something that's like, for example, $3,000 that they may owe you in the future because they really needed it in a time of, for example, unemployment, or in a time of an emergency for their family members, or a time of emergency for your own family members, etc., or random expenses here and there that show up. And so just want to say that ask questions before you make judgments or anything. Just don't come harshly or with a heart of judgment towards other people's situations, because what works for them may not work for you. That doesn't mean that you have to judge on that. Moving on, we have Facebook Marketplace / gifts. So this is any gifts or income I expect to sell through Marketplace or gifts that I may receive. If this was my birthday month or Christmas, I would definitely put like an expected amount, and so I usually don't make these numbers, if at all, and put it into the cells. I usually don't make them too big. And obviously Facebook Marketplace, it can go up and down depending on the items that you have, etc. Next, I have my fixed expenses section right here in yellow. So I have my typical fixed expenses, which are my cell phone, my tenant insurance, car insurance, my rent, and my life insurance. So those amounts, like I said before, they're pretty consistent, and so I don't have to really worry much about that. I usually just copy and paste from the previous month. Then we have savings and investments. So here I have all the categories for the investments and the savings that I do. So up the first two rows are for the RESP's accounts that I have for my children, so for my daughter and for my stepson. Then I have my emergency fund right over here. As you guys know, I am saving up for some cash here at home to be, accessible in the case of an emergency. However, I do have another saving emergency account, which is for a high interest savings account. That way it accrues interest, which is with EQ Bank, and I have forgotten to say this in other videos. A lot of referral links down below that I have in the description box are for you guys to sign up for if you guys are interested. I do have my EQ Bank referral link in there. I have my Wealth Simple referral link down there as well. Definitely not sponsored. And then I have the Receipt Hog app. Receipt Hog is basically like the Fetch Rewards app in the States. We don't have that here in Canada, and so it is just like that. You scan the receipts and you get points for it, and then with enough points you redeem for gift cards. And so that's downstairs if you guys weren't aware. Next, I have my TFSA and my RRSPs, which are other types of registered accounts in Canada we use for different benefits. I'm not going to go into detail as to the benefits for both. I will link somewhere up here Steph and Den. They are a Canadian couple that do financial talks, way more educated than I am, and not only that, they are so used to the subject that they don't stutter over their words, and so they explain it very thoroughly in a lot of their videos. So I'll link their channel up here somewhere, and I'll also leave it downstairs in the description box. That way you guys learn more about it if you guys are interested. But essentially those are registered accounts for investments. Next, I have my house fund, which is an account that I have linked with my husband, which is basically for saving up our rent. Our rent does sit in that account until it is due to our landlord, and for that it does sit in a high interest savings account. That way it does accrue interest, even if it's just like $3 a month. It is something at the end of the day, and so that's that. And then whatever we put in there, it accrues. We're hoping that eventually it can be the down payment of a house. We'll see in the future later on down the line if we do end up putting it towards like a TFSA or a RRSP, which does have that pro that you can put the down payment of a house and such. We'll see what that happens. Next, we have our cash stuffing fund. This is the money that I put into my physical savings for my cash envelope. Moving on to the right, we have groceries. So groceries here, I have the category where I have the location, just in case you ever need to like do refunds and stuff like that. I like to know the location of where we purchased, the date that we went. And the way that I did my template this year is that I have my category, so that's MD, that's me, and then my husband's category, whatever we pay for the respective grocery run, I would put it in there. And I have it set up that way the individual totals are here for the grocery runs for the month. And so I will give you guys an example. So let's say that we went to Walmart and then we went to No Frills, just for simplicity's sake. Let's say that I did that. I would keep this in chronological order. But anyways, let's say that at Walmart, I'm the one that spent today at $50. And then my husband, you know, a week ago, let's say that he spent also $50. So the individual totals would show up here on the bottom for each individual person. But then the total grocery runs in general would show up here, which I have the sum for these two. And then split in half, I have this divided by 2. So let's say that this particular example is obviously very easy because that means that I spent 50, he spent 50. The total is 100 for the household for the month, and therefore each person should be paying 50. But let's say if I spent 50 and my husband actually spent 200. That means that out of the $250 total that was spent for the month, in theory, if we're splitting groceries in half, which we do in our household, that's just what worked for us, each person should have paid $125. So then that's money that at the end of the month I would transfer to him if I owe him for the groceries, or he would transfer to me if he owes me for the groceries. And then my portion of, like I said, I don't combine my husband's expenses for this except for the groceries, but my total here does show up on my variable expenses for the groceries here. So as you guys saw, let's say that I put 50 in again, this would show up here as the total. So that's a cool little feature that I had added. All right, so next, variable expenses. I'm just gonna go through these quickly. This is food, so anything that has dine in or takeout, I include in here. I have groceries and then my Herbalife orders. As you guys know, I am a distributor for Herbalife, but obviously that doesn't come with like free products. So whenever I buy my Herbalife products, I do put it in there. Transportation, anything that has to do with my Presto card, which is just like the public transportation card that I used to get on the streetcar, buses, etc. So I put money in there. All I have to take Uber trips, that's there as well. And then fuel, anything that has to do with fueling up my vehicle. Bank things have to do with e-transfers, such as gifts that I send to other people. Debt payoff, which is another category that I'll get to in a second, but this is essentially the total of the table that you guys will see later. This is the total that I have put for the month towards paying down my debt. And then my credit line interest, that's a separate category. Fun money is anything that has to do with Amazon, clothing, going out, beauty, or personal. So things that are for me. Medical is any of the medical visits or medical situations that I have to do. And obviously with my work, I do have benefits. And so whatever I put in, let's say that my massage costed me, I don't know, $50. Whatever my employer or reimburses me for, I do, for example, do 50 minus 45, and whatever the total is, it'll show up in there. And the miscellaneous is anything else that may show up. I do have an other category, which, I mean, if something pops up that month that isn't within the donations, the gifts, or the subscriptions, I do put it up there just so I am aware of what's going on. All right, next is pretty simple. So the two new items here that I have are for my cash categories, both for my wallet and for my cash sinking funds, the binders that I have at home, which you guys have seen plenty of videos. If you guys are not new to the channel, if you guys are new to the channel and you weren't aware that I do cash stuffing or have slowly implemented some other items into my collection and such, definitely check out these playlists that I have right here. They're a fun watch, I would say, for other channels, and I hope that mine are a little entertaining as well. But anyways, these are my wallet categories. I'm not gonna go through them in detail, but you guys can see there I have groceries, gas, personal spending, kindness, eating out, and coffee. Those are typical cash categories that people do for budgeting purposes. And then for my cash sinking funds, I do have my emergency physical binder here that I have in the house, RV expenses and Dorian expenses, those are for my 2 children. Then I have Ro, which is my brother, Moises, which is my husband, my birthday, Mama, which is my mom, Christmas, gifts and birthdays, and then I have vacation. And then I have my saving challenges, which are a completely separate entity, I would say, just because they are saving for a non-particular cause, I suppose. And then once I finish saving challenges, I will reallocate funds and such. And then for saving challenges, as you guys know from other videos, if you guys are not new here, I do say that I usually save about towards like the saving challenges about $50 every single paycheck, so a total of roughly $100 a month. Sometimes I go over, sometimes I go under, depending on our needs and such, but I do try to put a little something in these categories to begin with, because it is always good to pay yourself first, even if it's just like a small little amount. And the last category I'll go over, which is all the way here on the left, and then we'll go over the totals and such, is my debt payoff. So then for my debt payoff, what I typically do is whatever money I from my paycheck or whatever it is that I put towards my debts, I use this chart for the type of credit card that I'm paying off. I would put in the name on the type cell, the payment date, so when I'm actually paying it, the minimum due for the month if it is applicable, which typically it is, and then the actual amount that I actually paid, which does show up in total in the debt payoff section that I did put in here. So that is that. And then essentially I will explain this in a little bit more detail. So these cells right here that I have, the total income you guys can establish is probably the total income that I have here. So that's all the money that I made. And in terms of budgeting, what you have to do is make sure that if you're trying to save, or at least if you're trying to stay afloat, you shouldn't have more expenses than you have income. In the net movement cell, I do have my income minus my 50% total expenses. That way I see hopefully a positive number, or at least a zero. That way I know that every dollar, which is known as a $0 budgeting, essentially each dollar has a job whenever you budget. And so that is that. We typically don't try to do that. We try to stay, you know, with a net movement a little bit positive. That way, you know, we do have some savings and such. And I will say that all of the categories that I had mentioned have totals. So for example, here for my variable expenses, it has a total here, both expected and actual. Same thing for my fixed expenses, etc., etc. And so those all get calculated to go into the total expenses. The only one that does not is my savings and investments, because that's money that I'm using to pay off something important to us first. So that's like paying myself first. And then debt payoff does get calculated into variable expenses, because in theory, fund left over, this category is, at least the way that I did the math for it, is my total income minus my savings minus my fixed expenses. And let me explain as to why. Obviously you have your income and you do need to save a portion of that towards your fixed expenses. What I do is that I take another portion towards my savings and investments, make sure that there's room enough in my monthly, you know, activities for that, and whatever room I have left over, that is what I have shown here as fund leftover. That is technically the amount that I have for my variable expenses, because if I'm getting my income and I'm subtracting fixed expenses from that, and I'm also subtracting a little bit for my savings and investments, whatever portion I have left is what I can allocate to literally everything else. And so that's how I did the math. If my variable expenses end up being like $2,000, technically those $2,000 should be what I have in fund leftover. And that is literally my entire tracker. I hope that I explained it properly and I hope that you guys did enjoy the video. Let me just close off this recording here. So yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video and enjoyed the fact that I was sharing my screen with like the different details and such. If you guys have any questions, by all means, budgeting is so complicated. It can be very easy depending on how advanced you get in the topic and how you teach yourself to not only learn all the aspects of it, but also learn to love it. I don't find budgeting to be a scary thing, and it is something that keeps you in tune with your expenses. If you're over here like swiping your card, or tapping, and you don't know where your money is going, that's where the problematic issues arise, because you don't know where your money is going. Meanwhile, you're making money and not saving money. And so yeah, all this to say, if you guys have any questions and you want to leave them down below, by all means, I'll answer it to the best of my ability. But as always disclosed, guys, I am not a financial advisor. I'm just a girl who has finances and wants to share her story, savings, investments, whatever I can do to help somebody possibly become better. And so that's basically it, guys. I'll wrap it up here. As stated before, if you guys haven't done so already and you are new to the channel, please make sure to subscribe down below. It'll make me really happy, and obviously it'll help the channel grow and help other people out. Make sure to like the video if you really did enjoy it, and do share it with a friend or with a family member if you think that they would benefit from it. And as usual, I will bless you guys with the rest of the day, which is right here. I hope that it touches your life in whatever shape, way, or form that it is applicable to it. And I hope that you know that God has his hand on you. Whatever concerns you have, just leave it to the Lord and he will help. It may not be right away and it may not be at your timing, but God's timing is the best timing, and it is perfect. So God bless you guys, and until next time, see you in the next video. Bye.